All right, since we've had a change in audience, I do want to repeat that we don't really want to read your testimony. If it's written down, pass it in, talk to us from your heart, okay? Try not to repeat things that other people have said. It's all in the Senate rules, which is published up on the Senate website. So, and everybody's sitting down now, that's good. We do like people to sit and not be standing around. And with that, we'll have the introduction of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Tom Manny representing Hillsborough 1 Pelham. I'm also a United States Marine Corps infantry combat veteran with 2 deployments in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I'm once again in front of this committee requesting a recommendation of ought to pass on HB 104, the Defend the Guard Act. This bill requires Congress to formally declare war pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the United States Constitution before we will release our National Guard to Title 10 service for deployments to a foreign combat zone. It does not prevent activation for any other purpose, including constitutionally prescribed functions in Clause 15. To execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, repel invasions. It does not stop emergency response, nor overseas training in accordance with per pitch 1st DOD. Our nation has not followed the Constitution since 1942. War declarations have been supplanted by authorizations for use of military force, which have allowed presidents of the last 10 administrations to act unilaterally overseas. And once forces are committed, to send the tab to Congress to be paid. This is an inversion of the founders' intent. As James Madison said, quote, "In no part of the Constitution is more wisdom to be found than in the clause which confides the question of war or peace to the legislature and not to the executive department." And yet, Congress has abdicated its responsibility for decades without a constitutional amendment to do so. And the reason this act continues to be filed in over 30 states every term is because of the lives lost, not just in combat, but also here at home. When Hurricane Katrina tore through New Orleans, the bulk of Louisiana's 256th Infantry Brigade and Mississippi's 155th Armored Brigade were deployed to Iraq and with most of their equipment. Lieutenant General Blum of the National Guard Bureau cited these missing units and equipment as significantly hindering early search and rescue efforts, costing many American lives in the critical early days. This issue crops up over and over throughout the last 20 years. Shortly before Hurricane Helene ripped through Appalachia, 700 soldiers from the Tennessee's 278th Armored Cavalry Regiment were deployed to the Middle East. Yes.
You're reading to me, okay?
Roger.
I would rather you talk to me, okay? I don't know how much more you've got to go, but I don't really appreciate being read to. I want you to talk to me.
Understood. So with that paragraph I was outlining, so despite the first impetus of this bill occurred after Hurricane Katrina, where individuals saw that the lives lost from Americans were exacerbated by our units not being there. This has been a pattern over the decades since then. So not only that, but it's like we have these generals that show up in front of all these committees and they speak and they say, oh, well, we're going to lose funding. We're going to lose aircraft. We're going to lose tarmacs. But meanwhile, 2 more guardsmen were killed in Syria. We have Sergeants Edgar Brian Torres Tovar and Williams Nathaniel Howard of the Iowa National Guard lost their lives on December 13th in Palmyra, Syria. And the question that I saw all over social media was, why is the National Guard in Syria? Why indeed? We didn't declare war on Syria. We never even passed an AUMF for Syria. It failed in the Senate in 2013. But still, we send men downrange and we send them to these areas without any formal declaration of war with no end in sight. So despite these assurances, and I say that we have allies in the Senate and in the U.S. Congress. We have Thomas Massey and Paul Gosar have been asked specifically about this bill.
I don't care about them.
Right, but they're about funding. So this is the funding question. They have been asked specifically about the funding behind this bill and the threat that most of the states, except for 2, have these massive fiscal notes. And the Congress has assured us that there is no funding threat. The funding has to be okayed by Congress. It is their job. They control the purse strings. So we have these congressmen on one hand saying there's no threat. Congress approves the funding, no congressman is going to put their neck out on the line to defund any state National Guard. But despite these assurances, I know that I can't reach into the hearts of everybody here in Concord. So the House has amended this bill since the last time this body saw it. And now this bill will not go into effect until 4 other states pass it. It allows us as a smaller state to wait for reinforcements. And as such, I ask these folks in this committee to recommend ought to pass on HB 104.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Representative Will?
Thank you, Chairman Gray, members of the Senate Finance Committee. For the record, my name is Representative Jonah O'Ryan Wheeler, and I represent the towns of Peterborough and Sharon. And I'm here as a co-sponsor in favor of following the United States Constitution. And that sounds like a political talking point, sounds almost pedantic, but it is 100% true. As Representative Mannion just mentioned, the United States has been engaged in military conflicts, some would call them a war, without the official declaration of war since 1942. That has included Korea and Vietnam, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and many more countries, which, again, have been decimated by actions taken by this government without the constitutional authority of the United States Congress. So what can we, the people, do about the fact that the federal government of our United States, or these United States, is seemingly not paying any attention to the founding documents which give it the public trust, the authority by which it enacts about $3.5 trillion worth of a budget every year? Well, what we can do is go to our state legislators, who have the power over the National Guard men and women who are serving our state, and say those men and women will not be used in unconstitutional, some would call illegal wars. And this isn't from the peaceniks of those students in the Vietnam era or the hippies of the past anti-war movements that we have seen. As Representative Mannion spoke to, this is from the soldiers who have fought and died in these illegal wars, who remember the brothers and sisters that they brought home in body bags, shot with little justification whatsoever from the leadership of the country, which they still to this day would fight to serve. So I am here as a co-sponsor and as a representative who wants this country to follow its constitutional obligations because, number one, it does not help us on the world stage to be fighting immoral, by virtue illegal wars. It has actually demolished our national security on the world stage and made us the war machine of the world. And if that's what the United States wants to be, then that's what the United States can be. But that is not the moral superiority which is talked about in many discussions regarding foreign policy that our country has. And number two, it's the right thing to do by the soldiers who are, I can't even imagine the level of service. I mean, I believe in service to this country as a legislator, as an individual. When I speak to someone like Representative Mannion or any of the many other representatives who have served wars like Vietnam and others, Desert Storm, I think about the military actions that they undertook and the fact that they've fought here in the legislature for a long time for the United States to continue to follow its Constitution. And I think the least that I could do for them as a citizen of this country who equally as believes in this Constitution would be to support legislation withholding our troops that we have power over from going out into these illegal wars without the authorization of Congress, which would be the legal process by which the founders of our country set to declare war. So I'm not scared of the military-industrial complex's threats of removal of funds. because of the points that Representative Mannion brought up, those funds aren't going to be removed. I'd like to see a United States Congress that attempted to strike the funding of a National Guard branch entirely out of the one state in particular. I think that would set up constitutional and other kinds of issues that would be far beyond than that one piece of legislation. And I think that ultimately the lives of these soldiers and men are not, these military equipment, this tarmac, the guns and the weaponry is not worth more than the lives of these soldiers who are fighting and dying for our country in wars that are illegally authorized. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Friedman, Aubrey? A-U-B-R-E-Y, looks like. Friedman.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Aubrey Friedman. I live in Bridgewater. I speak in support of this bill. I've testified in support of previous ones. This one, I just want to concentrate on the fiscal note because this is a finance committee. The risk of losing the funding. So in the fiscal note, I think it's conflating Title 32 with Title 10. Title 32 is supposed to be for when the New Hampshire Guard or any guard is working domestically in its own state or in the other states of the United States. We're talking domestic. And it is true that actually in that Title 32, the president does have the power to take back the money. It is clearly stated in there. But again, this is domestic stuff. Now, Title 10 is for deployment overseas. That's what this bill is talking about, deploying overseas, Title 10. And I don't see anything, and that's under the authority of the president and so forth. So I don't see anything in Title 10 giving the president the authority to take back money if the Guard doesn't perform what it's supposed to do. As far as the Congress, as was mentioned, has the power of the purse. Also, the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 does not allow the executive branch to claw back money that's been appropriated by the Congress. Only Congress can do that by rescission, and they actually did this last year. That's the way it works. The executive branch cannot do that. And furthermore, Congress loves the military. And as high as the budgets are, and they come over from the president, regardless of which administration, Congress is in the habit of adding more money to the military budget. They love the military. They're not going to be cutting back. I think this is a scare tactic that's used. And lastly, just about the amendment about adding 4 states or Massachusetts or Maine who might enact similar legislation. I think that's an improvement to this bill because the earlier version, New Hampshire might have been out on the limb and may be subject to retaliation, being the only one, but I think there's safety in numbers. So those are the reasons I support the bill, and I do think the risk of this defunding the $395 million is just not going to happen.
Questions from senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Mr. Grandy, in general, I'm going to ask you guys to go last so that you can summarize, and I'm going to take the rest of the people that are in support first. So Eric, Reiki. Yep.
Chairman Gray, Vice Chairman Innes, members of the committee, including happy to meet for the first time my senator, Senator Waters. My name is Eric Brakey. I'm a resident of Dover. I'm also a voluntarily retired 3-term state senator from Maine who moved to New Hampshire 2 years ago. Happy to call the Granite State my home. And I'm also the executive director of the New Hampshire Free State Project, but I'm here in my individual capacity, not representing any organization. And I'm very proud to be here today in support of House Bill 104, colloquially known as the Defend the Guard Act. You know, I have to say, one of the things I love most when I come to the State House here in New Hampshire is that statue outside. And it reminds me, that statue of Daniel Webster, I'm always reminded of the example he set and also some of the prophetic wisdom that he imparted to future generations. And I just want to quote very briefly for you from Daniel Webster. He said, "It will be the solemn duty of state governments to protect their own authority over their own militia and are interposed between their citizens and arbitrary power wielded by the federal government." And that is exactly what this legislation is seeking to do. It is seeking to follow through on a duty that the state governments have to defend their National Guard troops from the arbitrary authority, from misuse of them by the federal government. Now, as previous speakers have noted, this situation of undeclared foreign wars has gone on for almost a century. But since the dawn of the War on Terror 25 years ago, we've been in a unique situation as far as it comes to National Guard troops. For the last 25 years, National Guard troops from the various different states have accounted for almost half of troops on the ground in these foreign wars, which was never the original vision for what the National Guard was supposed to be for. And of course, this has come at tremendous toll to our military men and women. It has come at tremendous toll to their families, to taxpayers. And as far as I can tell, the only tangible benefit that seems to have come from this is that certain military industrial complex contractors have gotten very rich off the situation. And I'm not reading my testimony, but I just do want to make sure I hit a couple of points. I do have laid out in my testimony some of the constitutional framework for this legislation, which you're welcome to review. I will just very briefly note that the Constitution is pretty clear about which branch of government the power to declare war and the responsibility to declare war resides in. It is the legislative branch. James Madison outlined the reasons why very well, that the executive branch has the most to gain from war and therefore is the most prone to it. Therefore, it's with studied care that the power to declare war was put in the hands of the legislature. The problem, however, is that on the congressional level, nobody in Congress wants to vote on war because they, you know, as I see, they like to keep receiving the contributions from those who profit off of war without having to go on record and be held accountable by their constituents in election season for having voted for it. And so we're in a catch-22 situation where Congress will not take responsibility as they're constitutionally obligated to do, and therefore it falls to the state legislatures to defend their National Guard troops. And as was previously noted, the militia clause of the U.S. Constitution is very clear that the state militias, the state National Guards, can be mobilized for war purposes to suppress insurrection, to repel invasion, and to enforce the laws of the Union. When we take the example of Syria, for example, where National Guard troops have been deployed, and was noted we recently had National Guard troops who were killed in Syria. The mission was not to repel invasion, but to conduct an invasion. The mission was not to suppress an insurrection, but to foment one. And there is no law of the Union that can be pointed to. Not even the 2001 AUMF, which was previously cited and was passed on the grounds of going after Al-Qaeda, which, of course, as we all know, attacked us on 9/11. In fact, in Syria, we literally put Al-Qaeda in charge of the government there and have called it a victory. So there's no law that can be pointed to. On a personal note, just on the cost and the toll that our military men and women are facing from this. I'll always remember, I was the bill sponsor in the Maine Senate in my last term for parallel legislation on this, and I'll always remember we heard in the last public hearing there from opponents of the bill, including the Adjutant General for the state, arguing about money. And I thought it was very interesting to not hear arguments about why these wars are justified, why it's, you know, nobody goes around and says anymore, we're defending democracy, we're fighting them over there, so we don't fight them over here, because nobody believes it anymore after 25 years. but we heard a lot about money. And I'll always remember my good friend, Sergeant Aaron Rollins, who served in the Maine Army National Guard and lost one of his buddies in a roadside bomb in Iraq, turning to me afterwards and saying, I can't believe that they're talking about money. I wish they would tell my buddy's mother that his death was worth it because the state got a few $1 million out of the deal. And I'm sure that Sergeant Aaron Rollins would be here with me today to reinforce that point, except since then he's become one of the 17 military veterans every single day that has taken their own life by suicide. And as we have conversations about money, I just want that question to be in everyone's minds: how much money is worth it when we're talking about the lives of our soldiers in wars that Congress doesn't even care enough to vote on and articulate a clear mission for? And I've outlined in my testimony as well, I won't go into the details. I know as a retired senator myself, I have found the literacy rate among senators to be fairly high, so you can read that yourself. But there was a legal memo published several years back by the West Virginia ACLU outlining the legal protections that are in place when we talk about these threats to state funding from the federal government. It's mostly a paper tiger threat, and you're welcome to read that outlined there. So, as well as additional details in my testimony that are before you. So, in conclusion, I appreciate you taking the time to consider this legislation. I certainly hope that you will recommend ought to pass and you will vote for it. But most importantly, I certainly hope that this year, unlike Congress, which refuses to vote on war, I hope that the New Hampshire Senate will do an up or down vote on this bill so all the people can know where their senators stand. Thank you very much.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. General, you and Mr. Grady are the last two. You can just decide who goes first. You can go together, whatever you want to do. The two of you are the only two left.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. For the record, Major General David Michaelitis, Adjutant General, New Hampshire National Guard, Commissioner, Department of Military Affairs and Veteran Services. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak to you on behalf and opposition of this bill. So there's a lot been said. Let's try to distill this down, I think, to four things. Number one, just or unjust wars. This is not the venue to discuss just or unjust wars. As a bill sponsor, I'm also a combat vet as an Army Ranger and Green Beret who's on 3 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I know willingly the costs of conflict when I still to this day visit Staff Sergeant Jose Pequeño, the former Sugar Hill Police Chief, every year on the 20th celebration of his, unfortunately, being seriously injured in Iraq. All right, 3 things I think you all need to know about. What we talk about is Congress abdicated its war powers responsibility? Number 2 is the federal supremacy law. And number 3 is the federal funding piece of this bill or proposed legislation. Number 1, Congress is not abdicating its war powers responsibility. Congress signed the authorization and use of military force, which allows any president of any political party to do what he thinks is in behalf of our country's national interest. If you have a problem with Congress, take it up with them. The New Hampshire State House is not the venue for this. Number 2, the federal supremacy law. For over 100 years, the governor does not get a vote if Congress says or the president says, I'm activating you in Title 10, involuntary activation for a conflict. The governor of this body does not have the authority to override federal supremacy law. So you look at the 5 pages of the testimony, it goes in clear, concise U.S. code to tell you where Supreme Court precedent has been set to say a state does not get the vote to override a president. Third point is we talk about money and they don't like to talk about money, but we got to talk about money. So if you look at the second handout is, I will give you 3 specific cases within the last 5 years, how whether it's Congress, the Secretary of War, or the National Guard Bureau has threatened to take a state's funding. So let's go through these 3 cases. In 2021, during the COVID response, the Oklahoma governor wrote a letter to the Secretary of Defense saying, I do not want my Oklahoma National Guard members to be vaccinated with the COVID vaccine. The Secretary of Defense responded no. It went to court in Oklahoma laws, and the court ruling the injunction said, we will remove your federal funding for your training dollars of your service members if you don't get vaccinated. That was 2021. Next issue was in 2025, the National Defense Authorization Act. So we've all heard about the newest branch of the military. It's called the Space Force. As you may or may not know, 7 states and 1 territory have Air National Guard units performing a space mission. The National Guard wanted to have a Space National Guard. So what happened? The former Secretary of the Air Force wrote legislative proposal 480 to Congress to change the law that took units from the Air National Guard out of a state without a governor's consent. So if we think here today, we can say, hey, federal government, we don't want to play. You can't touch our unit or our federal funding. Read the National Defense Authorization Act of 2025, where the Secretary of the Air Force did that. They took over 600 positions from 7 states and a territory without a governor's consent. Third example would be as recently as September of 2025. The current administration did an executive order to keep DC safe and beautiful. Subsequent to that, the Secretary of War wrote a memo that specified that as you stand up a National Guard Quick Reaction Force and a National Guard Reaction Force, you must adhere to this training and these requirements, and if you don't, your federal funding will be in jeopardy. So there are 3 specific cases within the last 5 years where the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, National Guard Bureau has threatened to take structure and funding from a state. So what is the National Guard? The National Guard's primary purpose is to act as the combat reserve of the United States Army and Air Force. That is why we have HIMARS, high mobility artillery rocket systems. That is why we have the KC-46 refueler. The KC-46 refueler, those 12 airplanes cost over $3 billion and provide us almost 1,100 airmen at the Pease Air National Guard base. And if you don't think the 15 other Air National Guard wings in the country with the Eisenhower era KC-135 wants of refuelers, just ask. So in summary, I admire the admiration of the bill sponsor. The fight is with Congress, not in the New Hampshire State House. Federal supremacy law says you cannot trump what Congress or the president tells you to do. And number 3 is it will allow us to lose our federal funding, which has the equipment that provides our soldiers. So when another individual testifies says, hey, I don't like your fiscal note of $395 million, think of the Super Bowl. You don't train in readiness for a domestic operation mission. You train in readiness for your wartime mission. All of our pay and allowance, all of our equipment, all of the maintenance are 100% federally reimbursed. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Senator Brooks, I saw you first, and then Senator Waters, and I think I saw so many other hands go up over here. So,
thank you, General, and thank you for taking my question. So, I heard that Congress would not defund, but isn't it true that Congress actually funds the National Guard Bureau, and it's the Bureau that dictates who gets the money or can pull the money back?
Yes, ma'am, you are correct.
Okay. So isn't it possible that if we pass something like this, the national, Congress can, their hands are wiped clean. They gave the money. It's the National Guard Bureau that's going to pull the money back.
Yes, ma'am, you're correct, because we were essentially saying we don't want to do our federal mission is what we're funded for.
Right, final question.
yes, ma'am.
How many states have passed this?
0.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, General, for all you do and for being here today. Just 2 questions. One is, You know, you mentioned the KC-46s, and could you just talk a little bit further about how essential that operation is, and if the duty calls for national defense, you got to be ready to go?
Yes, sir, it's critical. So I would give you an analogy would be is whether you like it or you're not, the recent conflict or the thing that went on in Venezuela, the Vermont National Guard was involved with that. So you don't know when your nation calls. So whether it's combat aircraft or what we call Air Mobility Command, which is transports or refuelers, it's primarily a Title X mission to support whatever contingency or emergency operation that could be ongoing throughout the globe.
Thank you. Just one more.
Follow up?
You know, there's been a lot of discussion of money, and I understand that, but wouldn't it be fair to say that those people serving the Guard who have answered the call of duty and served, and some have fallen and paid the ultimate sacrifice, that they weren't doing it because they were worried about New Hampshire losing funding? They were doing it because of their patriotism and following the Constitution, the call of their commander-in-chief. Wouldn't that be the case?
Yes, sir. I would say the number one reason people join is a sense of service or purpose. So there's something bigger and better than beyond themselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Additional questions? Senator Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, General, for taking my question. So going back to the U.S. Constitution, Commander-in-Chief, defined in the statute, chief leader of the active military, federal military forces, correct?
Yes, sir.
Follow serious question. So when I think about this, when the president, as part of his commander-in-chief role, federalizes the National Guard, there's no role for the governor anywhere in the Constitution, is there?
Correct.
Lastly, last question.
Sir?
It's my understanding that when we're talking about a declaration of war, that there's been court cases made, and it basically came down to if Congress funds an activity of the military, that is the equivalency of a declaration of war. So if they fund an activity in a foreign country and they provide the financial resources for the military to engage in that, that is the equivalency of an act of war.
So I haven't heard of it put in that perspective, but I would agree with you. I think generally speaking for us is it's really just the activation piece of it. If the president says you're involuntary activated or mobilized, there's no recourse. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. We do it.
Thank you.
Okay, my turn. I was at a briefing down in Washington, D.C. with Lieutenant General, I believe is your boss. And I want to confirm that he has expressed the same things he expressed to me, is that in his discretion, when he is doling out the money that has been appropriated, that he does so in a manner where the mission of the Guard will be advanced, okay? And if some state decided to not participate in these things, it would influence his decision on the appropriation of those monies.
Sir, 100% agree. The National Guard is a combat reserve of the United States Army and Air Force. It's because, as our forefathers mentioned, they don't want a large standing army. So a lot of resources have been put into the reserve component, both the National Guard and reserves.
Additional questions? Seeing none, General, thank you very much. Mr. Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Good staff officer are always those you let the general speak first, and you come in afterwards and kind of talk to a few things he didn't talk to. My name is Kevin Grady. I'm a 28-year resident of Hooksett, New Hampshire, and I'm also a 25-year Air Force veteran. Today, I'm representing the State Veterans Advisory Committee. I've testified to all of you folks before, and I think you all know what we do. We unanimously oppose this, as we have the last 6 legislative sessions and different iterations of this same kind of bill. And it all boils down to the same argument that the general already made. The venue for this fight is the U.S. Congress. It's not here at the state level. If you want to look it up, Title 10, U.S. Code 12301, paragraph F is the one that says when the National Command Authority activates troops, the governor can't object. And I would take that to mean that the state can't object on behalf of the governor as well. Trust me when I tell you that all of our members many of whom are combat veterans. We fully understand the sponsors of this bill, their sincerity. We do not question their patriotism at all. Our whole issue with this is we don't feel like it's the proper venue. The National Guard is one of the great deals for American taxpayers. On the one hand, you've got this Title 32 mission, which is doing things for the state, which allows us to have a ready reserve of people if we need to go pick somebody up off of the side of a mountain when they shouldn't be there in the wintertime, okay? Or we need to send to our neighbors in Vermont when they have a flood, we can send helicopters over there to pick people off the tops of their roofs. And if you're the federal government and that unit has a search and rescue mission, okay, it doesn't get any better for realistic training than actually doing a real live search and rescue mission. So they'll fund that. And as the general said, most of the money that we get spent on our Guard comes from the federal government. Comes through the state and then it gets rerouted there. The National Command Authority, they have the ability to just activate forces, and we have a very good relationship on planned deployments, things that we know where people are going to go out of town that are worked years in advance. Everybody coordinates all of those things. At the end of the day, my last job in the Air Force was sitting behind a big steel desk. And if you want to have a fighter pilot sit behind the desk, the only thing that matters is where's the desk. And this happened to be at Ramstein Air Base in Germany on the Air Forces in Europe desk. And I can tell you that at a headquarters level, they're pretty intolerant of people that decide they don't want to follow the rules. They really are. And as I look at this from wearing my staff officer hat, and Senator Birdsell's point is is correct here. The way the money flows to the service secretary from the Secretary of Defense, and then it goes down to the individual services, and they portion off a section for the Guard, and the National Guard Bureau runs that money. And we keep talking about the loss of the revenue. It's not that they're going to take money out of the budget. They're just going to move it somewhere else. They're just going to take those forces and move them somewhere else. There are fighter pilots all over the Air Force flying the F-16 that would love to be flying the F-35 that those guys over in Vermont are flying, the Guard. And as the general mentioned, there are captains all over our Air Force right now that are flying a 70-year-old airframe that would love to be flying our KC-46s. But here we are, and we have that. And there's an active duty squadron right alongside our Guard folks, training every day, interoperability every day, doing a real-world mission that's very important. But I need you to consider that real-world mission could easily take place from Portland or Cape Cod, very easily. Now, it takes money to move forces. It does. So nothing would happen right away were we to pass this and were we to find a governor that wanted to sign this. Okay, and I'll leave you to make your own decisions on whether a governor of any stripe would actually sign this bill. Okay, but you probably wouldn't see anything right away, but 2-3 years from now, if you start to see a KC-46 size hangar go up at Cape Cod or Portland, yeah, you're about to lose your taker force. The other thing that could happen if we were to pass this legislation is they're just going to ignore us. And they're going to say, hey, if I need your forces, I'm just going to go get them. And you're going to go, wait, no, I got this piece of paper that says you can't do that. And they go, forces? What forces? You don't have any forces. Those are my forces. It says so right here in Title 10 of U.S. law. Those forces belong to me now. I don't care what you did at the state level. So the place to have this fight is at the federal level. I'm not optimistic. I wish I could tell you that I was optimistic that they're going to do anything like this at the state level. Because if you look back through the life cycle of this legislation year after legislative session that I've come up here and like Don Quixote jousting at a windmill, we've had a Democratic president with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. We now have a Republican president with a Republican House and a Republican Senate in Washington, D.C. And has anybody taken up this legislation? They have not. And I think that the reason that they have not is what's convenient for them right now is an authorization for use of military force. We haven't declared war since 1942. The last people that we declared war against were Bulgaria, Romania, and Hungary. And at that time in World War II, we went on a wartime footing in the United States. We went on this wartime economy. We asked people to make stuff that they didn't want to make to support the war effort. We don't need to do that anymore. I personally think Congress has declared war for the last time. I really do. I think the AUMF is the way they're going to operate going forward. Could they tighten that up? Sure. Would I like them to tighten that up? Absolutely. I'd love for them to tighten that up. But right now, this is not the way to get this done. The way to get this done is to get the political will in DC and not here in Concord. So subject to your questions, that's all I really wanted to tell you.
Questions from the senators? Senator Lang.
So assuming this passed, what would happen to General Michaelitis when the president says, I want you to activate your troops, and the governor says, sit in your chair, do nothing?
You're saying now if the president decides to activate our forces and General Michaelitis says, oh, we got the state law, what's going to happen to him? I don't know. More than likely what's going to happen is that the forces are just going to pass through to wherever they're being activated to, and they're under the command of somebody else right now.
Thank you.
Additional questions from the senators? Seeing none, that is the last person who signed up. There were 2 people who
Thank
signed
you.
up opposed to the bill, and online there was 47 in support and 0 opposed. I will take a motion to go into executive session. We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. We are in executive session. We might as well take this bill up right from the start. Chair would move ITL.
Second.
I'm. Yep. What's our aide's name? Cool. I believe that Senator Carson's folder book is in the office.
She's got it.
Okay.
We're good.
This
We
is the
just
one
heard
we
it.
were just hearing. I wanted to do this one quick. All right, I moved ITL. And Senator Lang seconds.
No, I did.
All right, everybody seconded. Okay, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of ITL say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And there's 7 of us now. 8 now? Okay. Okay, 8-0. Consent. All those in favor of consent say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And I'll take that one out.